本当？見えないでしょ？どこにいるのかな？全然見えないよ。
I miss you.
What's good, Internet? It is April 17th, 2017. A lot of 17s there in a row.
All the 17s.
We're coming to you live from Lobby 1 in Brooklyn, New York. Vice HQ, you already know what it is.
Yeah.
Let's get it.
Yeah.
Monday morning.
Monday
Got
morning.
all that energy.
Ah.
Gonna take this week by storm.
Ugh.
I got meetings. I'm gonna interview some possible applicants.
Already have.
I did an intern interview already once.
New codes for the time cards.
New codes. You gotta, when you go onto Replicon and you say that you work for 50 hours, you gotta make sure you say you did some of it on podcasts.
That's right.
That way no one thinks that you spent all your time editing news stories.
No, you're editing podcasts.
Editing podcasts, writing short form scripts.
That's right.
Bureaucracy.
Digital
Get it.
pyramid futures.
Woo. What's up? How's everybody doing?
It's my cat's birthday and my girlfriend's birthday.
Oh, that's the order you went with? Danielle Riendo joining us.
Hi. How you
On
doing?
Monday.
How you doing? It's Monday. It's birthday day.
It's birthday day.
417
Is
birthday
Ori,
day.
which animal of yours
It's Ori.
is? Ori?
The youngest of my animals.
Is that cat, dog? Which one?
It's a cat. She's
Ori's,
a little cat.
She's a cat. Named for Ori and the Blind Forest, or named for a different Ori?
It's just Orion the hunter.
Oh, okay.
Greek mythology. Because she's like really tiny but really scrappy. So we thought like, a hunter name is a good name for her.
I like it. I like it.
Yeah.
What are your favorite pet names of all time, Rob Zachney? Go. Robert
So
Zachney.
no, look, this is super embarrassing, but I kind of like. I had a dog named Lady because she looks like Lady from Lady and the Tramp,
That's
and
cute.
I kind of enjoyed the
Embarrassing.
associations, but like, not exactly
that's
hunter,
cute.
not exactly like. Oh man, this is Ori, like Orion the hunter. This was Lady. She had little bows in her ears.
Look, if that was her personality, we don't bow shame.
No, actually,
Okay?
this is the great thing. She was named Lady, but like she did not give a shit, except for when she was literally eating shit, which was a bad habit she had. But
she
she
was
was also
giving a
just the
shit,
fiercest of the dogs. She was the dog. She was the smallest and the meanest.
Yep. That's how it works usually, you know.
Patrick, how's Pixel doing?
Still kicking.
I'm not worried about you so much, but your dog. How's your dog?
How's your dog?
Doing good?
Yeah, dog's fine. I didn't even name that dog. That dog came with that name.
What?
Aw.
Yeah.
You're
no,
a
yeah.
journalist?
We adopted
What?
Pixel from a shelter, and the woman who had rehabilitated her, she was found wandering the streets of San Jose, from what I understand.
Damn.
Like a rejected breeder dog. So like they had tried to use her as a breeder dog. It didn't really pan out, so she was just tossed out in the street. So the woman who works with the group that rehabilitated her, she has like 10, 12 dogs at any one time, and a lot of the dogs are found on the street, and a lot of dogs don't have names, and so she would, the story goes, it may be apocryphal, but it's the story I believe in, so back off, is that she would look in a thesaurus, and she would go to like small, and just go to the next word, and then that would be the name of the dog, just until they were adopted, and at that point,
Right,
then,
and then they renamed
the owner
yeah.
could rename. But we were looking at dogs, and it's the dog named Pixel, and I was like, all right, people are gonna assume for the rest of my life that I nerd name my dog, but that's fine. And the true story is much cooler. So again, back off.
I love that. That's beautiful.
I'm
Thank
happy
you.
for you and
Thank
your
you.
story and your dog.
Thank you.
I'm happy we all are coming back from a weekend.
Yeah.
It is a Monday. I'm trying to do my best and live the life of that woman I met in the kitchen who
Right.
liked Mondays a bunch.
She liked Monday mornings
just gonna
because it was like coming off a weekend, feeling fresh.
Right. I'm
like,
gonna pretend all that's true and just like fake it till you make it, baby.
That's right. That's
how I
right.
got this far. How was everybody's weekend? Did anybody have like an especially meaningful or memorable
I
weekend?
did Easter stuff with my family and my pets.
What was your Easter stuff?
It was mostly my parents met Ori for the first time.
Very important.
And she played with their hair, which was really nice.
That's
and then
cute.
we took Drakey, my little dog, Drake, who has a very special name. We took him to the dog park, and my dad got to experience a dog park for the first time in his life. Like, fully experience a dog park.
Like, how many dogs were there?
There's like 15
Do they
Small
do the thing where
dogs.
like a big dog runs around in the circle and all the little dogs like have fun chasing
Well,
after
this is
it?
actually there's a small dog run and a big dog.
Oh,
run.
they separate them.
Yeah, they separate them.
Gotta keep them
around these
separated.
parts.
Yeah,
you gotta
I
keep
got
them
it.
separated.
I found
And,
the
like,
My
it's
Little
good.
Dog Drake very telling in that anecdote.
Yeah.
My Little Dog Drake, who has alienated every single other person in his life except Danielle.
It's true. It's very true.
You're very protective, which I respect.
I'm protective because he's like a very special needs dog. Like he's very, he was so good yesterday. We gave him a solid B+, where normally he's like F, see me after
Is the
class.
special need he has that he needs you to pick up all the poop he put all over the apartment?
There's a lot of that. He definitely tried to poop on the treadmill yesterday, but we had a solution that worked, and it was beautiful.
What was the solution made of? Was it like vinegar or?
Literally, paper towels under his ass, so he couldn't poop on the treadmill.
That's
and
not a
so
solution.
So it couldn't
That's not a
fly
solution.
to the other side of the room.
That's like the boat
which
is
what
sinking,
happens.
but I got a solution. Life rafts.
It's pretty much where we're at with Drake, but it worked.
Did it?
Everybody survived. Yeah,
Your parents were over when this was happening?
they weren't over yet. This was
Okay.
before brunch. You know,
I would lose my appetite.
Have your friends exhibited any like change of enthusiasm about like visiting your apartment since Drake began
keep him in one.
redecorating
well,
it?
Drake has his decorating tips, like decorating tips with Drake. They're, maybe they're a little non-traditional.
Uh-huh.
You might say.
Yeah,
They're
you're
a
in
little
Brooklyn. What's the
colorful.
Yeah.
You might say.
Just try diplomacy. It's like the space pirates thing. Just try to work it out.
Sometimes you have a non-traditional view of the world.
We did a stream of Stellaris in which
We sure did.
Danielle refused to let us attack the space pirates.
We
Here-
left
here
them
were
a
the options.
preserve.
You had a veto, and I let you use the veto. option.
Crazy murder and letting them stomp on your face. I just wanted a middle way, was all I wanted.
Yeah, well.
You know what I'm saying? I wanted to talk to them before just blowing them up forever.
So did Neville.
Call me crazy.
What?
So did Neville.
Uh-huh.
Good.
Rob, you played some more Stellaris over the weekend.
Yes, I
Right?
did.
How was that going?
So I'm definitely getting way more into Stellaris than I have in the past. Like, the first time I took a stab at it, there just wasn't a whole lot for me to latch onto, and this time it's going a little bit better. And part of that is maybe just I'm more in the mood to play a game like Stellaris right now. I'm sort of enjoying a 4X renaissance, which I was not the last time that I played Stellaris. But also, I guess like I did end up taking a page from your book, Austin, and I guess the experience of playing with you and Danielle changed it as well. With a game like Stellaris, I'm trying real hard, Ringo, to just
Nice.
give
Nice.
myself over to what it needs from me as like to tell its story, basically.
The
Like,
role
I'm
play. You're
trying to
saying
believe
you had to.
Stellaris is real.
Right, you have to RP. You have to make
Yeah.
your original character. You have to bring your
Your OC.
into Stellaris and really meet it halfway and start LARPing. I put on
More than
a whole
halfway.
get up. And you wrote about this, so this is on the site now. You can take a look at Rob's kind of like push and pull on this of like, does it leave you the gaps that you need to imagine a new space world, or does it leave too many gaps where it's just a lot of passive bonuses and not enough flavor?
It is
Not enough space pirate negotiation.
It is amazing that you can justify all sorts of things based on random events you observe in a game if you really, really want to. Like, a thing I mentioned in this piece, but I didn't go into too much detail, is that in Stellaris I created this race of bear people, bear scientists, who
Love
are
it already.
pacifist, little bit sedentary, little bit materialist.
They like to hibernate.
They like honey.
Yeah, they're
Yeah.
just
Who could say what the inspiration for this was, Rob?
who could say? Just big, sleepy, cuddly bears that love science.
Rob, I'm right here. Jeez.
Yeah. So
It was.
See,
oh,
this is
you.
the new role play that we
Yeah.
need to do
Oh,
here.
boy.
This is the new
Oh
one.
God.
All right.
Archive of Our Own is going to be real weird later.
oh god. So the thing is, So they're hyper rationalist. They're not spiritualist at all, and I'd sort of kept that out of my. Your faction can sort of develop sub factions within it, which is kind of a cool thing that Stellaris lightly borrows from Victoria 2, which is all about like different classes and agendas form within your society. You're not this like abstract monolith. But the cool thing was, do you know where my people discovered religion? It was on the planet I forgot about. On the border of the Empire, where I had a bunch of unemployed bear people, like forgotten colonists, just like sitting on these empty tiles, not doing anything. They had nothing to.
They were like,
so they
God,
sat around,
man.
like, you didn't build any building. You didn't build, like, a power plant for them to work in. You didn't build, like research laboratories. And so left alone
it was
to
just
their own
meadows
devices,
and streams.
they got connected to their spiritual side.
That's right.
They found God in the river, in the sky.
That's right.
And I know that's not true. I know it's because it's because they were also on the frontier with a empire that had spiritual beliefs. Like, I am sure.
Yeah, but that's still kind of cool, right? Like,
Yeah.
I think that is built into the system intentionally, because you could have built buildings that make it so that they remember the core values. Like, there are literally structures you can build that are like, hey, remember what we do back in my hometown is we're scientists. Remember that you believe in the scientific method. You don't believe in weird space gods. But you didn't build those structures, and instead the nearby culture, they were broadcasting their propaganda. This is where I start.
I was awesome, but how much of this is because like you like do a lot of like, you know, like role playing and dungeon mastering, where like by nature you are imaginative? Because I think for a lot of other people, they could look at that and go, yo, that's just bad storytelling built into the game's mechanics, and you're making up for a lot of it because you're just naturally inclined to fill in the gaps.
But
My
some
man.
of this,
that one.
some of this is some of this is big.
I don't know,
algo.
man. I think you're reaching here. I think you're reaching.
Ethics attraction is a thing that's systemically represented in the game, in which when you're on the frontier, other space empires can influence your populations and spread their space ethics in place of yours. Like, that's just rendered in the game, and to counteract that, you need to pass edicts, you need to spend currency. Like, there's all sorts of ways in which you need to try to keep your populations in line with what you believe, or else they'll slowly slide over to another empire's way of belief. Like, that is represented in the game.
That's pretty
What I
cool.
do is take the extra step and say, like, okay, well, what's that look like? Like, I get that there are numbers there. I get that it says that bit by bit, the people on this planet are sliding to look more like their neighbors. But I'm curious, what's happening on the ground there that makes them believe that?
What are those bears rolling around saying?
Saying, exactly.
You know, like when they're chilling by the meadow, are they like...
when they're getting high, welcome to Weed Week, hashtag Weed Week.
They're like, that cloud looks like God, man. Is that what they're saying?
That's what that looks like. That's what they're saying.
They're rolling around?
Well, no, or like, are there people coming by? They're like, so like a thing that game doesn't do is like, there's no notion of civilian trade. You don't see civilian ships. A few other games like this will show civilian ships and stuff like that. But you can imagine that, like, oh yeah, like local traders are coming through and trading with this little planet, and they're the ones who are bringing in like Bibles and shit, right? Or like they're just like saying like Godspeed, and your bear people are like, what speed? What? Who? Huh? What's God? What's a God? And then it all happens from there.
But what, like, for me, so the thing about like ethics attraction, to Patrick's point, is that those mechanics are going to result in really similar things happening in game after game after game. Like, people on the frontier are gonna get pulled in some unexpected direction. Like, that's just always gonna happen. So is there much of a narrative hook there? For me, I want generally something a little more ornate hung on those hooks before I will start to join in the storytelling and build from it. Whereas like Austin, like inveterate role player, trying to be a good like character in a story.
It's like you're playing with like, you know, a bunch of newcomers for like a role playing group. It's like, this guy's not very good at the coming up with stuff. Like, I'm gonna help this guy out and I'm gonna fill in the gaps
That's
for
totally
him.
Or for me, the reason I prefer this to some other similar things is, so I feel like this can go one of two ways, and even inside of Stellaris it goes one of two ways, which is sometimes you get the same literal event over and over again. Like, I've played this game
Sometimes.
times. You find the space amoebas, you find the Tiyanki crystalline entities, like they are always called the thing they are, and the game could go one of two directions, or there are a couple of different strategies. It could build a bigger list of handcrafted events that you stumble into, so that you do get to the thing and you see scripted event that says, an encounter with a certain specific alien missionary has turned your people into being more religious. And I get that is attractive for some players who want that scene scripted out for them. Yeah. But I prefer, personally, knowing that that's happening systemically, and then I can craft what that scene looks like in my own head, because it will be different every time that I script it in my head. Whereas if I've played 12 games and it's like, oh, the missionary showed up again, then I'm just saying, oh, did you get the missionary event? I mean, that's what happens in Crusader Kings 2, which I love, but it's like, oh, did you get the event where the devil missionary showed up? Cool, okay, I'm on that arc now. I'm on that path.
This sounds similar. I have when I worked at Giant Bomb, and I would sit in and watch Vinny Caravella play video games. The way that man plays video games is similar to when you see sort of things shared on Twitter where a crazy thing happens in their game, and it's like, oh man, that's awesome. You know what? None of that shit ever happens in my games. Like when I see all this cool stuff shared on Twitter with like Breath of the Wild, like look at this wacky thing that happened in my game. I was like, I didn't do that. Like, I just played the game like a normal person, and none of this crazy shit happens to me. And this, it actually bothers me sometimes. It makes me feel like I play games poorly or like less imaginatively. So like this extends wider out to like I think sort of like a philosophical difference in like approach to games that like you have, Austin, in which I don't. Like whereas like you enjoy that like systemics driven discovery, like creating your own thing. That shit doesn't happen to me. And so often I play games that rely on like player creativity for those moments to occur. They don't happen to me, and then I enjoy the games less because I feel like less of a player for not pulling those things off or bringing that to the table.
Okay, so two things. One, playing games like that is like playing jazz. It's about the bokoblins you don't kill. You know what I mean? Like it's you have to meet it halfway. You have to improvise. It's part of why I love doing permadeath every week, is because like it actually gives material constraints that say, no, you can't play the game this way, and it forces me to be even more creative, and it makes every time that I do something wild that much more dangerous and more dramatic and more playful. For people who don't know, we're doing a weekly stream called Permadeath, in which I'm trying to beat Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild with only 3 lives. I've only lost 1 so far, and we're like getting there.
I mean, you've been doing great ever since that one.
But
you've been doing great. So.
I haven't lost any other lives since the first one. And we're in Hateno Village, and we're making moves. 2, though, Patrick, think about how much more you might enjoy the games that don't give you that space, or that don't demand that sort of meeting them halfway, and instead say, like, hey, here is our strict, very beautifully rendered narrative that doesn't leave any room for not interpretation, but any room for, like, wiggle room or, like, making up your own solutions to the problems. We've built a really good, like, fun, direct line. I don't mean this as a diss in any way, but like I really don't enjoy things like that. Like Last of Us was a game that I think lots of people really loved, and I left it going like, okay, like that was okay, but the things that I remember cleanest about it were a scene in which I was supposed to save Ellie, but wasn't allowed to go into the room that she was in until I killed the last bad guy who was hiding behind a crate 200 yards away. Right. And I remember the fight with the sniper that should have been incredible, and instead I found my way to a point where I had a line of sight on him, shot at him, couldn't hurt him because that's not the solution, and saw a bullet come sideways out of his gun and hit me. Like literally from my sniper rifle, saw the bullet arc to the left at me, and I was like, well, that's not my type of game. I don't get to do the creative solutions there. What I needed to do was kill all of the dudes and rush to the door to trigger the cutscene. And I just think like we get different things from these games, right? Like I happened to get more enjoyment out of the ones where Link will jankily get the angle and manage to like hit the shot that hits the rope that causes the thing to fall. Right, stasis abuse, all sorts of weird bullshit like that. Sure. Where none of that was really planned. It was just the systems were there to lead you to make that. Do it. Yeah. Right, and I don't think that my enjoyment is better than anybody else's. I think that can come across because of the enthusiasm sometimes from like when people talk about Far Cry 2 or talk about Breath of the Wild, where it feels like we're so excited about the emergent storytelling that it can be like it can come across as dismissive of people who want more
of the more tightly crafted.
Yeah, and I don't want to do that. Rob, you had a hand up.
Yeah, well, I'm just curious.
Zachney?
You're not supposed to peel the curtain back like that, like Austin. Okay. You're like
we're live on Twitch. People can see you do it.
Yeah, they can see it. That's fine. But anyway, I am curious. like, okay, going back to the tabletop role-playing analogy.
Yeah.
I created a very nice encounter for you. It had dramatic moments, cool settings. Work with me, Austin. Like, I gave you this entire, like, dramatic run through Sniper Alley to go, like, work your way through all these dudes. You're going to burst in. Like, and it wasn't subtle. The blocking was there. You saw the path. And instead you were like, you were like that player. You're like that party in D&D. It's like, we could fight this battle. But instead, we're going to use all our rogues' utility powers to spin this off in an entire direction. In fact, you know, we're not 86 the entire quest. We're going to go try to kill God.
That's what so literally, I mean, so for people who know, I run a tabletop role-playing game podcast called Friends at the Table, friendsattetable.net, friends_table on Twitter.
Friends_table.
That game has been defined, or that podcast has been defined by moments in which I have to throw out months of preparation because my players do something I didn't anticipate. And that's been the highlight for me as a GM and as someone who makes the show, is like, oh, I have this great boss fight set up where they're fighting this guy. I think I've told the story, maybe not on this podcast, but on a different one, where they're fighting a guy or like a monster that consumes the essence of words and has consumed all of these powerful words over the course of 1,000 years of life. And like, all right, it's going to have fire powers and it's going to be able to like summon hatred out of them. It's like all this stuff around like different conceptual things. And then I had this one player who's playing this incredibly arrogant wizard who for once in his life, like focused in on the notion that he didn't know anything at all, that he himself could be ignorant, and like really focused on it so that the word eater would eat that word from him. And I'm like, oh, fuck. Yeah, if the word eater eats ignorance, it's going to lose all of the knowledge it has. And I throw out this boss fight because that's just like a way doper ending to this conflict. Because of that, because I'm willing to throw that prep away, we wound up in weird cities of the undead. We've wound up with gods dying that I didn't expect to die, that completely changed the metaphysical realms of what this fantasy setting were. We went from fighting what looked like an evil corporation to fighting like a living embodiment of late capitalism. Like, oh wow, I didn't know that this is where this was going.
This show.
Should listen to Friends at the Table.
I have to.
So like those moments exist because I'm willing to both build the cool sniper alley, and then when the rogue says like, no, I got another way to do it, let that happen. And I like games the most when they are doing that, when video games the most when they are doing that. But of course, I think to Patrick's point, games are better at giving me scripted stuff. Like The Walking Dead, it was better at being a game about a scripted branching story than about emergent moments than a game about zombies has ever been about scripted or like emergent zombie narratives. Like I really like State of Decay a lot, but it's nowhere near, I think, as good of a game about zombies as the first season of The Walking Dead is. Like, and I can admit that because I think that games are just so far really good at that sort of storytelling. And I think maybe the reason I champion that sort of emergent stuff so much is because when it happens, it feels rare.
Yeah.
For what it's worth, too, there are plenty of games that say they want to do that thing and just don't. So it's...
Or they say they want to do that thing, and what actually becomes emergent gameplay is like a bug or a glitch that they later on are like, oh, look at our beautiful emergent storytelling, and it's like they just didn't QA that out.
Right.
As opposed to building something deliberately that allows you a lot of freedom and then kind of going with
Or that goes halfway, like the first, like Shadows of Mordor, which is like, oh, wow, there's all sorts of cool stuff happening here, but fundamentally all I can do is kill or enslave these things, right? Like, oh, wow, like that's the guy I killed once before. I'm going to fucking kill him again. And it still feels cool because that's, you know, Nikvar, the flame orc or whatever, but like... Welcome to my new fantasy podcast. I'm going to name orcs for the next hour.
Well, I guess, and that's why I like those systems. Like, I see you poking the holes in like your actual ability to have choice and direction in a game like Shadow of Mordor. But as a player that tends to not find themselves in situations that organically create those narratives and stories, just because the way I guess I play video games, I appreciate systems that create the illusion of having those organic and interesting moments built into systems, which is a different approach to having the player have that experience that for folks that won't naturally just go do a weird thing and like push the boundaries of the system and throw a grenade down a hill and see what happens. Like, I'm just not going to do that. Yeah, yes, that was a deliberate Far Cry 2 reference.
I know.
Check.
I appreciate it.
I just tend to not have those moments, so I appreciate when games, even if it is all a structural illusion that you can like rip the facade apart, I appreciate the attempt at creating the facade because it gives me those, or can give me those moments that I will not organically find on my own.
Totally. What about, so we can kind of pivot here a little bit, Patrick. You're 15 hours into Persona 5, which is a game that has lots of dialogue options.
Yeah.
And lots of mechanical, lots of agency in like the party that you're building, which sort of persona you're taking into the dungeons, things like that. But like, that's not a game with branching paths. That's not a game where systems can lead to unique outcomes from dungeons or anything like that. Do you find that the choices that you're given there are adequate at making you feel like a cool story is unfolding, or does it pick up? Does it manage to do that despite not giving you any sort of like serious agency in how you're coloring your character or the world?
Persona 5 is very good at making me feel stressed out at all times, and now that I'm even thinking about it, I'm actually getting stressed out about it again. But the pace that game moves, I don't know. I even 15 hours in, like, there's so little story happening in Persona 5. Like, I was told early on that you have to be patient with the storytelling in this game, that it takes a while for it to kind of really hit the ground running. Like, I finished the first palace. Like, I understand sort of, like, the narrative conceit of what's going to be happening in the game. But, I mean, like, the storytelling in Persona 5 is more about, like, who you choose to spend time with, and then like the story, it's essentially you spend time with one person but not another person, and you start making choices over gating certain subplots that you're just not going to be able to experience because the game is framing narrative around the passage of time, which a lot of games do, but not in a way that is as constrictive as Persona 5 makes it to be. So I don't know, like I haven't really figured out if I'm really having a mode of storytelling as much as I'm just choosing, like, it's more of a choose your own adventure, and you're seeing, glimpses into other chapters, knowing that you just are deliberately not going to see others.
Do you do the thing that happened for me when I played previous Persona games where it would be like, oh, I really like this character, and then you get like 3 levels deep into their social link, and then you go, oh, fuck, I kind of don't. This is kind of not, I'm not really interested in this. I feel like I've wasted all of this time.
Got a real Yosuke situation here.
Yeah, you Yosuke is a bad person, but a good, I'm not here to defend Yosuke. I'm not going to do that.
Actually, Yosuke works because he is like that friend that a lot of people end up with in high school that, like, you realize later, oh no, you were socially isolated because people figured out you're a dick.
Yeah, kind of. I really wish there was a level in the Yosuke, this is a Persona 4 character for people who are listening, thing where you're just like, level 7 is you being like, you know what? Maybe we're done. Maybe we should branch out, Yosuke. Maybe we should, like, hang out with some other people. See other people. Maybe, like, you come to me when you, or just even to be, like, more specific, like, my dude, why are you so homophobic? Can you chill? Like, let's have that talk. And if you don't want to deal with it, I could hang out with some other folks from now on.
Part ways.
I just wanted him to have a turn, and he didn't ever get that turn. Anyway, who are you choosing in Persona 5 so far, Patrick?
Well, again, like, it's so early that, like, the choices you have are you can't really make. The game gives the illusion that time is passing so fast that you're making choices you won't be able to go back and see other things. But I'm early enough in the game that there aren't enough characters to be making choices in which, like, you're gonna fall behind with others.
I just need to know who your favorite is, Patrick. I need to know. The internet needs to know.
I mean,
is it the nurse?
Is it? The nurse is not interesting enough yet. The nurse just seems super interested in fucking me up, which is, curious. That's fine. That's like its own,
I guess she's a doctor.
Approach to a relationship.
Pharmacist.
I like learning how to make coffee.
Pharmacists are doctors.
Yeah.
They're PharmDs.
That guy's kind of weird too, though.
Yeah, he seems like he's up to some shit. And he should maybe stop giving me so much shit about what's going on in my life, because you got mysterious calls coming in and people showing up to your coffee shop. So why don't you just back off?
Back the fuck off. Danielle, you've been watching. Do you have a fave?
Yeah, my girlfriend's like 80 hours in.
Jesus.
She's real far. She still has a ways to go.
Right.
I think I like the cat the best. I think I like Morgana.
Morgana? Yeah.
He's really good.
He's very good.
It's a he cat with Morgana.
Isn't it? Is it? Well, spoilers, because 15 hours in, like, the question of whether Morgana is a boy or a girl is like a confusing narrative point that they dance around.
Is it really? I must have missed.
I think early on he's like, he uses he pronouns in relation to himself.
That's why I'm saying he.
His
That's the only reason.
name is Morgana, which is traditionally what we think of as a woman's name. He's a cat. There's also debate about whether or not he's a cat or not, even though he's clearly a cat.
That is a big cat.
Well, he could be a car.
Car is similar to cat. It's only one letter off. It's only one letter off.
Hate anime.
Cat.
I mean, I agree with you, Rob. I agree
Yeah, well,
with you.
you're 15 hours into this anime, motherfucker. Here we go. We're in
It's
it.
like you're describing like a
Another
shitty
100.
Utena remake.
I love that you
You
know
can't
that.
talk shit about anime.
I love that you know it.
You do Utena reference. That doesn't hold.
The
just
only
did
way
it.
to truly understand something you hate is to learn what it is.
Okay.
And
Good.
watch 112 hours.
2017.
It's also, yeah, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong on whether this is, like, unique to Persona 5 or not, because I have not played. I played an hour and a half Persona 4 with the intention of playing more of it, but just, it just fell off. And I've never played the series in the past, other than maybe playing one of the Shin Megami Tensei games for, like, an hour and a half on PS2. But, like, it's really interesting how, and this isn't a spoiler for Persona 5, but, like, the idea is that you're, essentially like, going into these palaces, these dungeons, which like represent like the twisted personalities of bad people in the world. And then when you solve the dungeon, like they confess their sins in like this really cathartic way that is like incredibly like, when it happens with the first character who, again, I'm not going to get into the plot structure of like who he is or what happened, but it's really interesting in the game narratively to like, someone who is a categorically bad actor who has done like demonstrably awful things to people in the world, and then an action that you do as the player forces them to make a public comeuppance in which they openly discuss what they did and admit they were wrong in a public setting, like, which is not a thing that happens in reality. It's a thing that we like crave and wish that people who are bad actors could be convinced that they are wrong and they would talk about why they are wrong. But that never actually happens. That's not how society works. And yet, what's interesting, like the power fantasy of Persona 5 is this idea that you can convince, maybe not through means that they fully understand, but convince them to like admit and take responsibility for the bad things they do, like, is a really fascinating narrative conceit.
And appealing, right?
Very.
Is Persona 5 kind of about like our deep-seated fear of the disappearance of like shame from like public life? That's kind of what it sounds like. Is like,
Danielle's seen the most of
In
it.
a lot of ways, yes. I think so.
Yeah.
I mean, it's about a lot of things, but that holds true. Like, that is the implicit narrative.
Right,
that's
like
going
part
on
of
here.
the first arc, I'm not going to give specific details, but for me, the most frightening bit of the first like villain, the first antagonist whose heart you're trying to change, isn't that he's done terrible things, which is terrible. But it's that other people in the community who are also authority figures know that he's done terrible things and look the other way.
Yes.
And it's only after, you have to get involved at that point, because the authority figures who are traditionally supposed to be there to help protect you and who are supposed to make sure that people like him get their comeuppance and are removed from positions where he can do harm, don't do their job. And that's terrifying.
Right.
I think that can kind of speak a little bit to the notion of shame. Imagine if you didn't have the ability to break into someone's heart and change how they feel. Like most of us, don't have that ability.
As
far as we know. We actually had a question that's kind of like vaguely about this. What do you do in that situation? This comes in from Tim from Sydney, Australia. Not Tim Barnes.
Not that Tim.
Not our Tim. Sydney Tim. If you have a question, you can send it, of course, to gamingadvice.com. Use question in the subject. On Mondays, just so people know, we go to the top of the bucket on Mondays. We skim the surface.
Skim the top, yeah.
Gotta skim from the top of the question. So
These
please,
are new and fresh.
right. Please don't feel bad about sending something in and being afraid that it's going to get lost deep in the bucket. We'll see it.
But we will say that I'm going to make it my job this week that we are going to begin the first purge of the bucket.
You're going to dump a lot of the bucket out.
Down to a manageable size so that, it's... I can imagine it being discouraging to send a question thinking it may not get answered for hundreds of episodes. So we're going to try and get it to a place where your chances are higher. But like as Austin said, like on Mondays, we're definitely
Mondays, every
pulling from
Monday.
recent
Off
stuff.
the top.
So this comes in from Tim, who says, I used to hang out with a group of old high school friends every week to play video games, but shitty politics, slur-filled trash talking, and boys club attitudes ended up getting in the way of the fun for me. I still get an invite every Monday, but I haven't showed up for about 2 years. I don't regret losing touch with those guys, but I regret not having many people to share the fun of games with anymore. How have you all found people on your wavelength who like games and the time to enjoy them together? How did you all find each other? Love the site and podcast. Cheers from Sydney, Australia. The first thing I'll say is, like, try to get into their hearts and steal away what makes them evil. They're not evil, but they are not great.
Sounds like they're a little shitty.
Sounds like they're a little shitty. Sounds like they're a little bit like Yosuke.
Yeah, you know.
Just saying. So yeah, what do you guys do in this situation?
I mean, because of who I am
Yeah.
and how publicly I am who I am, I don't often get people who are using like terrible slurs around. It does happen
It happens,
sometimes,
yeah,
no question,
yeah.
especially in some of the weirder avenues in my life where maybe people don't know me on social media or whatever. You know,
Right.
I definitely like work with a lot of folks who have extremely different beliefs about the world, like when I'm on my ambulance, for example.
Right.
So what I try to do is do the thing that I was taught to do in previous careers, which is like, I personally believe in bridge building. And this is like, always depends, like, how much are you in danger? Because legitimately, some people are in danger if you come out to someone or if you say certain things to someone, like they could. Don't be in danger. Don't put yourself in
Right.
danger. But if you're in a position where you can do this, I do the bridge building thing where I'm like, hey, I don't know, man. Like, there's a lot of people out there who actually aren't this stereotype, and
Right.
like sometimes having a conversation that's not very confrontational and having a conversation that's like, hey, I'm going to assume you haven't been exposed to a whole lot of folks that you're making fun of, and that's why you're doing that.
Right.
Your mileage may vary, and that's not like a one-size-fits-all kind of thing. That's the thing I personally do a lot of the time.
Totally. Patrick and Rob.
So, one, I'm just imagining a reality where I've got a regular gaming group that I'm hanging out with enough to realize they're all a bunch of scumbags.
Yeah.
But also, like, it depends. I don't know about the group. Like, if it's just a bunch of like douche bros, then probably you just got to flush them. Like, they've outgrown their usefulness to you, and you've outgrown them as friends. But I suspect that there are some people, like, in a group of friends, there are people you're closer with and not. And I would not be surprised if the people you do have a strong relationship with, if you sort of talk to them sort of offline or just in private and be like, hey, is it just me, or are game nights kind of weirdly homophobic and racist? And chances, like, you'll be surprised how many people are going to be like, oh my god, they are homophobic and racist. Like, I thought it was just me. And so there is kind of sometimes it helps to bring it up with like the people you know to be a little more on your wavelength, to just like look around, check each other and be like, yo, is this fucked up? And then once everyone realizes that it's a little fucked up, you can start. That's when you can go inside the palace of psychosis and change
right.
people's hearts.
Go
Gotcha.
right in.
Take that, Kamoshida.
Yeah, I don't know if I have any personal experience that I can really bring to bear there, but I definitely subscribe to Rob's theory of, like, this is definitely applied in, like, other, like, the racist member of your family, so
Right.
not necessarily like a gaming group, but, like, the idea that sometimes groups tend to sort of ignore or discussing something uncomfortable or that someone expresses because, in the same way that, people drive by a car accident, like, you assume someone else should be the one that does it. But if everyone gets on the same page, it's a lot easier for a group of people to, like, call something out or to try and make that change rather than you feeling like it's just on you to vocalize and be that change. Because the reason you don't do that is because you don't want to be the person that, like, haha, like, you shouldn't act that way. And then you suddenly realize that everyone is shitty and, like, doesn't think it's a problem. So, like, if you can kind of work your way there by talking with other members of the group, like, I think, like Rob said, like, there's a good chance that, like, a lot of people are on the same page, but they just don't know how to vocalize it or don't want to vocalize it. But if there's a group dynamic that shifts, then maybe there's a chance for, and maybe, sometimes, I think this is true. Like, I experienced this with certain friend groups where, like, it's easy to slip into the shitty, ignorant way you talked in high school and stuff like that.
Yeah.
If that's like a group you've had for that long, where people have this understanding, they're like, we know this word is shitty now, and, like, I'm better than this, but, like, this is just how we talk because, like, we've known each other for so long. Like, this is, we all know that we're all not racist or homophobic, so, like, I can slip in that word every once in a while, and it's like, part of growing up is recognizing, like, hey, like, you gotta leave that shit behind.
Yeah,
like,
nah,
yes,
actually.
maybe you're
Don't say
not,
that.
maybe you aren't actually homophobic and racist, and you're saying that because like it's a funny word we used to use that we know better now. But like, just stop using the word.
Just chill. Just don't. And I mean, I guess the other thing here is to Tim's question is like, what do you do when you've kind of jumped ship? When you've said, you know what, I've given it my best shot. These folks aren't great. How do you meet new people? I would say it's not. Okay. Well.
Hey, listen. Space pirates sometimes need a little love.
Yeah. I think the thing to know for me, like there's this line in this email which is like, how did you all find each other? And the answer is like time and luck. Like
and Twitter.
When I think about Twitter, but even there, like the world could have gone this way instead of that way.
Oh, for
very easily, and none of us could be having this conversation right now. The people who I count as like my dear friends, including the people on this call and in this room, like it would have been very easy for me not to have them in my life. Some of them came in and out of my life. Some of my best friends were people who I was friends with 10 years ago, and then for like 4 years we just didn't talk because we had a fight about something, or our lives went different ways. We moved into different directions. And when I think now about like the 15 people I'm closest to, it's like a weird patchwork quilt. I didn't have the, maybe this is true for some people, but like, oh, I'm going to go make a new group of friends.
Right.
It's really hard to do that. What did happen for me was I committed myself to meeting new people. And so like, oh, I'll go to the local tabletop game store and I'll run a game there. I'll play in a game there. Or I'll go, start going to a book club, or I'll start going to something on campus that I wouldn't traditionally force myself to go do. I'll go see a live concert and maybe I'll meet a couple people there. And in general, most of them weren't people I were on my wavelength or that I connected with, but maybe one or two of them were.
Yeah.
Maybe I dated someone and it turned out weirdly that I was really close with their sister and now we're still friends, right? Yeah. Like that sort of thing happens, and let that happen. And I think that's the way, instead of trying to find like the package, like podcast advertisement style friends in a box, you know what I mean? Like you're not going to get your monthly friend subscription. What you are going to find is
give it time,
every
Austin.
now and then
that will become a thing soon enough.
That'll be the latest thing that
Date
we
people
sell.
to get close to their sister. That's what I heard.
Well,
always
you know what I mean.
get close.
I'm
with
just
the
saying,
sister.
like that's what happens weirdly. Is like the long-term friends that I think people have come in weird directions, come from weird directions, and lean into that. Let that feel normal. I don't know. I think just part of growing up is definitely slipping away from big groups of friends. People get busy, and like it's hard to get the same seven people in the room every week. If you have it, love it and hold on to it dearly. But
I would say, as an advertisement for our forums that are coming at some point, that's probably going to be a good place to find some nice people.
I guess we have forums coming.
Maybe
that's the thing that we have. Have we talked about forums?
I
don't
thought
think
we
so,
did.
no.
Okay. We got some forums
Maybe
coming.
community features that we have, like this lovely Twitch chat.
Or we do have a fan run Discord.
That's a good place to find.
And the subreddit. We do have some shout-outs to the subreddit. Absolutely. Yeah, those are the sorts of things. Like find the communities where other people who you vibe well with are already going, and try to meet some people there.
Yeah, well, you got to give yourself the most chances, right? Like, and so like that's why like joining groups and like going to places and just giving yourself a shot with like the most amount of people, because that's just especially the nature of like making friends when you're an adult, which like sucks and is hard. And Katie and I have realized this as when we bought a house and we don't go out as much because we have a child. Like so, like we recently had this experience where we were at a restaurant with some of Katie's family, and there was, and Jessica's like, grabbing stuff off the table, and everyone's laughing, and there was this table next to us with this family, and they had a daughter that was about a little older than Jessica, and they were kind of looking at each other, and so we like kind of said hi and chatted for a second, and they were talking about like a birthday party they were having for her daughter, like I don't know, a week or two from now, and they paid their check and walked away. But then Katie and I looked at each other and we're like, we really liked those people. How do you say to those people, we want to come to your birthday party. We think we would be friends. Like there was no, like I don't have like a parental business card that's like, here, like let's exchange. They walked away and we went. They just walked away and we felt deep regret that those people probably could have been our friends.
You could reach out, figure it out.
Just go to that restaurant a bunch and hope they show up again?
Misconnections.
Oh my God.
Misconnections.
Misconnections for
Couple
parents.
for couple. That's what that means, right? That's what.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's for parents. I had that
I
experience
want
in
you
a
to
dog
do
park
this.
once.
So you don't have like any sort of. Was there no clue that you
It's
could
too
follow?
late now. This was a month and a half ago.
You need to hire a PI. You're gonna find these people.
Yeah.
Don't worry.
Get
Just
their-
hire a good PI.
Go to the restaurant, get the credit card receipt. You remember what they ate, and then.
We need to see the tapes from 411. Like there was people that were sitting next to us. We need to get their faces. We'll go to the local PD. Get a PI as well. You'll find them.
You'll get them.
Don't worry.
I think this would be worth it because then Katie and I will just find out what their address is, and we will just very organically
Just
be
show up.
walking our dog and our kid like out in
Yes.
front of their house.
And
Like,
she's dressed up for a birthday
hello,
party.
Hello. Fancy
Weird.
meeting you 3/4 of a mile from our house.
This could be a podcast. This sounds like a Gimlet Media podcast
I
to
like
me.
this a lot.
Fucking God. All
Patrick
right,
and Katie
that's-
try to find friends their age that have kids roughly the same age. The
Uh-huh.
podcast.
Oh,
The
God.
birthday party podcast.
Let's do one more little question, and then we'll wrap it up for this Monday morning. Rob, which of these other top questions really speaks to you? There's a few other ones here. Which one do you love?
I like this one about cities.
Okay. Do you want to read it from Daniel?
Sure.
From LA?
From Daniel. A lot of my gaming podcasts have become overloaded with haters who are fairly certain they are LA experts and also can't pronounce Sepulveda. Nice to have you there to me. Nice to have Rob there to educate these pizza boys on tacos and Zanku chicken. Anyway,
Been to
Waypoint
LA.
now
I used to
has
live in
people
LA.
in 3 great American cities, and several people have spent serious time in San Francisco. A lot of video games are set in these cities or fake versions of these cities. What representations of your cities do you think got it right and what got it wrong? I know Patrick has a serious problem with Watch
Chicago.
Dogs.
Yeah.
Yeah, just deep, heavy sigh. I don't need to explain Watch Dogs. You fucked up.
I think you might have to. People don't know anything about Chicago.
Apparently they don't.
Chicago is not a city that gets represented very often in video games. Like, it's, while an iconic city does not have, there are things, not like great visual iconography in the way that we think of like New York or San Francisco. Like, it doesn't have a bridge. That's basically what I think it like doesn't have. It's
it
like
does
a big
in
bridge.
Watch Dogs. It definitely does in Watch Dogs.
There's that one in Watch Dogs. Yeah. The Chicago in Watch Dogs somehow branches off to like the Pacific Northwest of Seattle at some point. And, like, just, and so Watch Dogs has like a very, in some ways, like just a disgustingly stereotypical and gross exaggeration of like the crime problems in Chicago. Like, from what I understand, like later, like they mostly just picked up from a documentary they watched and then built the game and paints just a picture of Chicago, which is like a big city, multicultural, lots of different, diverse, interesting neighborhoods in which some of them have a crime problem, like a lot of cities. Like, Chicago is not like what Donald Trump paints it out to be, but like the Chicago that Donald Trump talks about is the Chicago that is portrayed in Watch Dogs, as though like it's not a place that people can live in. Or, like,
Can't go out for milk.
Everything is like fucked up, gang-ridden, high rises that are just full of guns, and like it was frustrating because it's exciting as someone that like I didn't grow up in Chicago. I grew up outside of Chicago, but like I take a lot of pride in Chicago as a city, and so like the one time it's in a game, not only was it gonna be cool to like go down to Millennium Park or like go through Logan Square, like areas that I know and love. They fucked it up, and it's like, well, you fucked it up this time, which means it's probably not going to be in another game for a long time to come. And it's frustrating that if someone could play that game, and if their takeaway of what Chicago is that is like, a crime in itself that is really frustrating as someone that appreciates a lot of what Chicago has to offer, and it was not represented in that game at all.
I'll say I think the one that people come back to a lot from New York is GTA 4's New York, which is, of course, this like stark, cynical caricature of what New York is, but in the game's quiet moments can capture something about what this place is and was. When I moved to LA for a year and then to Canada for 4 more years after that, after living in New York for years, I absolutely would boot up GTA 4 every now and then as just this weird like trip home. But like I knew it was wrong, right? Like Midtown becomes downtown way too quickly. Like the outer boroughs are just a fucking mess. Like I couldn't ever go to the neighborhoods I actually lived in Brooklyn. Like I just didn't. They were there for literally a block. Like, oh, there's Prospect Park, sort of.
Oh God.
There's like one. I actually met Danny O'Dwyer up at one of the beer gardens in Astoria that is represented in the game. In the game, it's like as big as this room is, but the actual beer gardens in Astoria are these massive open spaces where kids are running around playing. So it's just not there at all. But it also kind of is. Like, it is kind of enough. There was this moment I had when I was driving a golf cart chasing someone to kill them, of course, in the financial district in GTA 4, around the World Financial Centers, which are these three towers. I used to work in one of them, right, in 2007, 2008. A short walk from what at the time was still the empty wreckage of Ground Zero, where they hadn't built anything yet. And I turned this corner past one of these huge glass structures in the game on this golf cart. And, like, for the briefest moment, like, the quickest little snapshot, I felt dizzy because I've turned around this corner before. Jersey City is right over there. And then, like, down there, and, like, it was just, like, so exactly right in my head. And those little snapshot moments are transformative for someone who's lived there. Of just like, oh, wow, yeah, I recall living there. I recall getting lunch with my friend AJ. I recall going to the movies nearby and getting way too expensive beer at the bar nearby because everything in Fidei is way too expensive.
Yeah.
Like, that is really rad. And I had the opposite thing with LA in that I have a very clear memory of going to a museum in LA for an event or a couple of events. And I had this, like, very clear memory of a parking lot that doesn't exist in LA anymore. It's become a building because this was 4 or 5 years ago now, 6 years ago. That parking lot is still in GTA 5. And, like, it's near this really great tunnel with these, like, fluorescent lights down it. And, like, it's really weird to be able to go to that place in GTA 5 and, like, oh, yeah, this is where, like, me and my friends used to park the car before we went to this museum a bunch of times. It exists here. It doesn't exist in the real world anymore. It's this weird archive of a place that's gone. And I don't know that I like the rest of GTA 5's LA that much. Rob, as someone who lives in LA, what do you think of that game's attempt at LA?
Yeah, I mean, I kind of bounced off that game a little bit. I think... So you had with GTA, you kind of have a perfect convergence of the Hauser's culturally illiterate satire and a city that is unusually easy to stereotype and get wrong. And when you slam those two things together, you get something that at first glance is enormously repulsive. So that was kind of a hang up for me. I think an issue a lot of video game cities have is that on some fundamental level, you can never live in them. Your characters are like, the story of cities is how people live in them. It is the way where people are going to work, what they're doing when they're not at work. And in a video game, all of that's going to be a backdrop for let's be honest, probably a bloodbath. Maybe a hacking adventure that turns into a bloodbath, but still, that's probably going to be what happens. And the other thing you're going to run into is, if you're not willing to engage with the way cities are structured and how people live in them, the way you're going to create that sense of authenticity for a lot of your audience who are also not familiar with the thing you're modeling is you just play into the worst. You just play to the stereotypes. Right, so LA is it's so superficial in Hollywood, and everyone's got a regular plastic surgeon that they use, and that's all they care about. And that is so not the city, but for a lot of people that is LA. And so if you don't hit that beat, people are going to be like, "Oh, I was hoping that GTA was going to be about Los Angeles and be a send up of that." And so I feel like that's what happens to a lot of video game cities.
Right. Yeah, that's actually a really interesting dilemma to have, I think, is like, I talked to some of the people on the Mafia 3 team about this, which was like, are you trying to you're not representing New Orleans. Exactly. Like, you're not. So you're not even calling it that. You're calling it New Bordeaux, and it has wider streets than New Orleans, and it has basements that New Orleans couldn't possibly have because they would flood. you know, it is similar enough to evoke a certain thing. And the question I kept asking them was like, are you trying to evoke New Orleans in the 1960s, or are you trying to evoke something that will be felt as New Orleans in the 1960s?
Right.
Because those are two different things. Like a place in a specific time is a certain way, and there are ways to represent that are accurate, and there are ways to represent it that feel accurate.
Yeah.
Did you play much LA Noire, Rob?
Mm-hmm.
God, I love that game.
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
gonna be a
Do you know anything about LA in that time period, and whether or not which of those two kind of columns it fits into, or those?
I've heard that it does evoke a lot of it structurally, at least. Like the streets are actually fairly accurate to what the streets were, and the buildings are actually fairly accurate to what the buildings look
Right.
like. I mean, we talk about the story of LA Noire.
I mean, I think it's
however
a part
you
of.
want,
I think that's part of
Yeah.
how it's trying to represent its time period.
yeah, for sure.
It's like a post-war.
I mean, I think it's also trying to be LA Confidential and Chinatown at the
Right.
same time as like somewhat. The really interesting thing about that game is that there was actually like two modes. You could like play the story in the world, or you could actually play the mode that let you just drive around and collect things.
Right.
Which is kind of rare. I don't know if other open world games do that super often, where it's like actually separating the story content from the sort of like, hey, you know what's fun is driving around in this like pretty amazing recreation that we made, which is in itself pretty interesting and
right,
weird.
which is interesting, but like a completely different thing.
Yeah. I just want to mention briefly two
Please.
games that I love dearly that have represented sort of very loosely but gotten the character of two cities that I've lived in. And those are the first two Crazy Taxi games where there are no bloodbaths. You're doing something else. Okay.
They dodge, but you know there would be bloodbaths.
There would be some blood, but you're not like
There would be
point-
bloodbath.
the point of the game is not to
Sequel,
murder.
there will be blood.
At some point in New
Prequel.
York and San Francisco, there will
Yes.
be blood. But they do an amazing job of making like a very cartoonish and like
Right.
exaggerated, but also like in a not in a illiterate satire way, but in a very like sort of loving and endearing and like fun, and very Dreamcast era happy, fun, sunny
Yeah.
sort of way, and I love it.
All right,
Is that
I need
how
help here.
is that how San Francisco feels to you?
I mean, I didn't drive a cab in San Francisco,
Sure.
but the sort of
So
verticality of
we
that
found a
city.
job that Danielle has not done, by the way.
Oh,
And
finally!
you found one.
Yeah.
You did. You found one.
Just wait.
Next week, ask
Yeah.
me.
But
if I'm
hang
driving
on. So
Uber.
I don't remember Crazy Taxi real well, and so what I remember is not having enough quarters, and people sort of
And yeah.
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 Crazy
course.
money.
So what's so like? What is it about? Like, so what are the passengers saying? Like, what is it about that game that's kind of evoking these places? And why isn't it? Why is this kooky? Why doesn't its kookiness curdle into shittiness?
Well, I mean, like, you could certainly argue some of that kookiness curdles into shittiness now, and maybe it didn't in 1999. I mean, all the sort of little people that you pick up are sort of general, vague stereotypes of people you'd find in San Francisco. There's a psychology grad student. It says it at least in the manual of the game. I played mostly the Dreamcast version,
You're going
like, to be
deep
clear.
into this.
I love that game a lot. And I think it holds up because it's a great arcade game that actually has an incredibly fun gameplay loop of like, you can take like an easy fare, or you can take a more difficult fare. You can do tricks for more money. You can do kind of all this other stuff that risk versus reward is like really very clearly balanced and clearly sort of given to you on a little platter of like, here's how this all works. And it's still really fun to drive around that city.
It's a good
and
game.
It's a beautiful game that I think the thing it gets the most about San Francisco is a sort of general sunniness and light of the city. Like that.
Do you
This is a
think
weird
that's
thing to
still
say, but there's a
true?
lightness to that city.
Like, do you think like that's a game of that? The San Francisco of that game
It's from the 90s.
It's from the 90s.
Yeah.
It's mid like internet boom, but it's pre-contemporary Silicon Valley.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, not that there aren't mirrors between those moments,
Sure.
but like it's before Google buses. It's before like it's probably at a time when any of us could have the jobs we now have and successfully live in
And
San
live there.
Francisco.
Yeah.
And not like have to commute for an hour and a half to get in.
Right.
Like
It is like a beautiful and somewhat idealized vision
Yeah.
of that. Absolutely.
I think that's really going to be really interesting going forward. That like 30 years from now, we will have Crazy Taxis San Francisco, Whereas the real San Francisco will, of course, be the capital of Sci-Fi, the new
Sci-Fi,
Silicon
right.
Valley,
Yes.
like mega corporation that has taken over the
That part of
northwestern
California,
quadrant
yes.
of not just California, but the North American continent.
Right.
They'll obviously be at war with one of the other confederacies. Like it's going to be a
Absolutely.
whole terrible
Absolutely.
future.
A little bit of Mad Max, but also
Right.
a little more Blade Runner.
A little there. That part will be very Blade Runner.
Yeah,
You've seen
for
Blade Runner. That's actually it says L.A., but they renamed San Francisco Los Angeles.
Man,
Man, now I'm just picturing like Google
Sci-fi.
death squads like rooting out
Oh, yeah.
the last of the Facebookistan resistors in the vineyards of Napa,
I-
and like
Don't be evil changed a
man.
little bit, over the years.
I used to have a beef with Margaret Atwood's use of the corporation security corps in The Year of the Flood and some of her other post-apocalyptic dystopian future fiction, because it was reduced down to it was the Corpse Corps, CORPSE Corps. But now that I live in this world, I feel like it's
She didn't go far enough.
She didn't go far enough.
Yeah.
The real world, the Death Squad, and then like DETHSQUAD, and they put a hashtag at the top.
Oh.
Like that's where we're actually gonna be. Fucking. Ugh.
Like, if you look at what happened to United the other day,
I know.
we're not actually
Our world is
any different at all.
fucking ridiculous.
So-
We're gonna get out of here. We're gonna
Yeah.
face this world for the rest of this week. We got some streams coming. We obviously have the podcast on Friday coming. We have some good writing coming. It's Weed Week on Vice. If you're into Weed Week, if you want to hear stories,
What?
yeah. Can you give me a hashtag Weed Week?
Hashtag we weak.
There it is.
Very
you can find
nice.
out. I think we have 1 or 2 stories about weed on
We
the
don't have
site
a
this
ton.
week. But you can go to
Join the
Vice.
conversation.
Hashtag join the conversation.
Yes.
Please. There's other stuff going on all week. Look for it at waypoint.vice.com, at twitter.vice.com, at facebook.com/waypointvice. You can see all the videos that we do at youtube.com/waypointvice.
Yeah.
Shout outs to Tim Barnes, at Tim Barnes451 on
Yeah.
Twitter, our podcast producer. Shout out to Dylan Coburn, who doesn't have an internet presence. He only lives on the dark web. He stays off the grid.
He surfs in the real world.
Right, that's
Not
actually
online.
true. He's a surfer. He does surf. Danielle, where can people find you on the internet?
Danielle RI on Twitter.
Rob
you can see all
Zachney.
sorts of pictures of my cats and dog.
Happy birthday again to Ori
Thank
and
you.
also Patricia.
Yes.
In that order. Rob Zachney, what about you?
I'm on Twitter at Rob Zachney.
Patrick Klepek.
You can find me blazing up at
Great.
Patrick Klepek on Twitter.
Can I please get a picture of Patrick Klepek smoking a joint next to Blaze the cat from Sonic the Hedgehog?
Oh, Blaze.
Please.
Just Blaze.
Just Blaze. Shouts to Just Blaze, who hasn't been around in a minute, but I guess technically,
right.
according to the canon of Waypoint, he owns us. I think that's
Right.
true
I
still.
think he does.
You can find me at Austin_Walker on Twitter. Look again for everything that we do here at waypoint.vice.com. Shout outs to Bowen for letting us use his song Miss You off the EP Pale Machine. You can find out more about that at waypoint.zone/BOEN. That's going to do it for us. Do you have something to say, Danielle?
Be good or be good at it.
Peace.